Hi, everyone. I am Stephanie Beatty. Welcome to the Inclusive Teacher Co podcast. I'm a former secondary English teacher. I've been in education for well over a decade. And now I'm a neurodiversity specialist, literacy specialist, ADHD entrepreneur, and founder of the Inclusive Teacher Company. My work is all about helping teachers and parents understand how neurodivergent brains learn, how they regulate, how they thrive, and about making sure that children don't quietly fall behind because nobody has properly joined those dots. So I'm a massive advocate for neurodivergent brains. Inclusive Teacher Co, I talk a lot about reading. I talk a lot about strategies, probably talk about reading not in the same way that schools usually do. I don't see reading as a narrow academic skill or just something to be linked to school results. I see it as something much bigger than that. It supports learning, confidence, self-understanding, and also life chances. Reading supports life chances. If you haven't already listened to episode 2 about how weak literacy lessens life chances, please do go back and have a little look and listen. I try to keep all of these singular pods fairly short so that you can listen on the way home, you can tune in at lunchtime, so nothing that will overload you. But yeah, I talk about reading a lot and how it supports life chances. But today I want to talk about one part more clearly because I think it gets missed quite often. Reading, of course, it supports academic development. And if you have a good reader, you have somebody who can access the entire curriculum with ease. All right. But it doesn't just support academic development. It actually plays a very important role in emotional development, would you believe? So if you're parenting and you're a divergent child, especially one that has challenges when it comes to emotional regulation or even ADHD specifically, then it matters. Emotional regulation isn't just about learning to calm down after something has happened. It's also about recognizing what you are feeling, understanding why you've reacted that way or why you're feeling that way, and also making sense of other people's reactions and having enough language. And this is key, having enough language and perspective to respond rather than just react. And this is where books and reading and stories can be quite powerful. Now, I was an English teacher for over 13 years, so I am speaking from experience, but for the past couple of years, I have been training schools, teachers pretty much across the globe. So I can tell you that this stuff is real, it's true, it's relevant, and it matters. When children read stories, they're constantly stepping into other characters' experiences, other people's experiences. It's teaching them so much more than potentially we can sometimes in real life, especially if they're immersed in the story. They are watching characters feel left out, feel embarrassed, frustrated, hopeful, happy, jealous, calm, chaotic, confused, overwhelmed. They're seeing how feelings affect behaviors, affect relationships, affect choices. And over time, that helps children build a very deep understanding of emotions, both in other people and themselves. And this is one of the reasons that reading can support emotional intelligence. And I know there will be English teachers listening to this, as well as other teachers and parents and so on. And I know that they'll be advocating for this. The English teachers will be thinking, yes, this is absolutely spot on. We can teach empathy through books. This sort of reading and this sort of emotional intelligence building, it basically gives children repeated exposure to the inner lives of other people. They start noticing that behavior doesn't just come out of nowhere. Okay, so a character might snap because they felt ashamed first. They might withdraw because they felt rejected. They might say something unkind because they were embarrassed, they were worried, they were trying to protect themselves. Stories help children see emotions that are quite layered and that reactions usually have something underneath them. And this matters for our neurodivergent children because many of them are experiencing emotions very intensely, very quickly, much more intense than neurotypical brains. So in the real moment, there's often not much distance between the feeling and the reaction, but books safely create that distance for them. A child can look at a character and think about what is happening without the same level of threat or defensiveness they might feel if they were being asked directly about their own behavior. Sometimes it's easier for a child to understand themselves through a character first. They might not be able to say, I got angry because I felt embarrassed or I felt excluded. But they might be able to say he got angry because he thought nobody wanted him there. And that's a very important bridge, because once our kids start to recognize emotions and characters, they start to build language and insight that they need to recognize those same patterns in real life. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't happen overnight, guys, but it does happen over time. This is why we should be reading regularly, because that is the part of reading, of how reading supports emotional regulation. It helps children notice feelings more accurately. It helps them connect behavior to underlying emotion and develop what I would say is more nuanced emotional vocabulary. Emotional vocabulary matters. If they don't have the vocabulary to express how they feel, they're going to feel even more frustrated. Okay, a lot of younger children only have a small handful of words available to them when they are dysregulated. Angry, sad, fine, annoyed, but those words are often too broad to help. A child who says they are angry might actually be feeling disappointed, ashamed, anxious, left out, rushed, overwhelmed. Okay, the more precise the language, the easier it becomes to understand what's actually going on and what support is needed. And books can help build that precision. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm doing trainings to schools. And we talk about one of the biggest problems teachers are having in the classroom with some children with ADHD or autism, for example, is emotional regulation. So, of course, we talk about strategies for emotional regulation, but I say it's very important that we understand their level of vocabulary and their reading age. Very important we understand, we know what their reading age is, because if we're talking to them and we're saying, well, do you feel quite anxious? Did you feel excluded? Did you feel resentment? They might not know what those words mean. It all depends on their reading ability, their knowledge, their vocabulary. But we can build vocabulary through books. We can introduce children to a much richer emotional vocabulary, not just as sort of word lists, but the emotion in the context of the story. Children can see what disappointment feels like. They can see what guilt looks like. They can see relief, resentment, hope, confusion, conflict, all played out in words that make sense. They can see them in the story. And that is very different from simply being told to use feeling words. Okay, through stories, guys, children begin to understand what those feelings actually mean. And reading also helps with this perspective taking as well, which is another huge part of emotional intelligence. If children are in a better position to describe how they feel, okay, it means they're more aware of how they feel. If they're aware, they're of course building that emotional intelligence. But so many social and emotional challenges come from misreading what is happening sometimes. Okay, a child might assume that someone was being rude when actually they were being anxious. They might assume that somebody's been excluded on purpose when actually there might have been a communication misunderstanding, for example. But stories can help children practice holding more than one point of view at once. If you've got a child who has some executive function impairments when it comes to flexible thinking, for example, stories can help them look at more than one point of view, okay, and help them think flexibly. They can learn that different people experience the same event differently. They can learn that intentions and impact are not always the same thing. They can learn that people don't always say exactly what they feel either. And that kind of perspective taking is incredibly important for their relationships as well. We know that neurodivergent children might struggle to form and maintain, sustain healthy relationships as well in their friendship groups, for example. And that sort of relationship or friendship, it doesn't always come easy if a child's always overwhelmed, impulsive, and already feeling defensive. Maybe there's some sort of RSD in the background there as well. When I say reading is emotional training, this is what I mean. I don't mean that books obviously magically make children calmer overnight. I mean that reading gives children repeated, low pressure opportunities to explore feelings, motives, misunderstandings, consequences, relationships. It helps them build empathy, emotional vocabulary, self-awareness, and again, perspective taking. And all of those things feed into regulation. But of course, The important caveat here is that reading itself can be hard for an ADHD brain, and then a lot of this that we've been talking about today can become less accessible. If a child's having to use a lot of their mental energy just to decode those words and figure out what they mean, they haven't got a lot left for thinking deeply about characters, motives, emotions. And that is one of the reasons reading challenges can have a massive impact. Okay, let's think about it. It's not just that reading is harder academically, it's that the child is always also missing out on one of the most safest and most consistent ways to build emotional insight. And then add an ADHD into that picture, and of course, it becomes even more complicated. So if they already find sustained reading hard, has a reduced working memory capacity, or even experiences emotional responses very intensely, reading will start to feel effortful quite quickly, especially if they are not yet fluent readers, and especially if they're dyslexic as well, because reading will start to feel like stress. And once it starts to feel like stress, avoidance will follow. We know the battles that parents have, the shutdowns, the meltdowns, the I hate reading, the refusal. And same for teachers as well. And understandably, they think the issue is motivation, but it's not motivation at all. It's complete overload. So if reading becomes associated with stress or shame or repeated failure, then we lose not only the academic benefits of reading, but also the emotional and relational ones as well. So this is why I think this conversation matters so much. Reading isn't just about school. It's about helping children make sense of people, make sense of themselves. It's about giving them language for what they feel and perspective and what other people might be feeling as well. And again, for neurodivergent children, especially children with ADHD, those are essential life tools. So when we support reading, we're not only helping a child access the curriculum more easily, make their life less stressful, we're also helping them build the foundations for emotional intelligence, regulation, and relationships over time. And I think that is the most important conversation. And do you know what, guys? It's a hill I'm freaking dying on. All across North Wales, there's the little hills with me. Steph died for what she believed in. But it's not just about getting through a book or keeping up with school. It's to help that child build a richer internal world, a stronger emotional vocabulary, and a better understanding of themselves and other people. And this is far more important than other people realize. And I know there'll be a lot of English teachers listening to this dying on that hill with me. So if it is, if you are one of those, please do let me know. I live in my office, so it would be nice to hear from some of you. So guys, if this episode made you think differently about reading, or you have gotten something out of this, please let me know. I would also love to invite you into my ADHD Reading at Home program for parents. It is an online recorded program. It's practical, research informed, completely self-paced as well, low pressure, super low pressure, super low friction. And inside this program, I walk you through how ADHD affects reading, why reading can become such a point of stress at home, and various ways that you can support your child in a way that actually works for their brain in their home rather than against it. So it will be step-by-step reading support strategies. And when I say step-by-step, it's very easy to digest. Scripts for difficult moments, guidance around behaviour, support with school conversations. And we have a forum as well, an online forum. It is moderated as well to access other parents who actually understand what this feels like day to day. I am intentionally limiting this to 50 purchases per month whilst I build the community, build it carefully, and bring more people into my team so it stays supportive and high quality. So if you want to stop feeling like reading at home is a constant battle and start approaching it with more clarity, calm, and a better understanding of what's really going on, you would be very, very welcome inside, because you're not just supporting a child to read, you're supporting them to understand themselves, to relate to others, and move through the world with much more confidence. If you've gotten anything out of this, please let us know, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks, guys.